Welcome to the Pastor Study here on. Wait a minute, we got to stop, y'all. we got part of the band back together. We still ain't got everybody. We still got a rogue musician out there somewhere. We don't know where he is, but we got one of the pieces that we've been looking for to bring the band back together. We can't even get to the full introduction no more. So Jay, on Facebook, I know you play the music. Stop the music right now. We need to just make sure that we know that we got part of the band back together.
Okay.
Delegate Price is with us, y'all. Yeah, she's back with us. After you want to give her a shout out. Welcome back. By the way, what band member are you? What are you? The guitar player? Are you the lead singer?
I mean, I don't know. I think I'm backup singer to Albion.
Backup singer. Oh, yeah, so Albion lead singer.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So while you were away, we had a new edition battle in the text thread too. I want to talk to you about that offline. I can't tell you that today.
That's a little before my time.
We are glad that you are here because we are in the midst of a heated conversation, and we're gonna pick up right where we left off. We got to come with attorney Anton Bell, relationship expert, D squared is what we call it, Albion Line, Doctor. And then producer extraordinaire, got his shades on today on the inside.
Yes.
Brother Jason Covington. So we're glad that y'all are with us. Part 2, y'all. We're still talking about Will and the whole situation. And Marcia, I want to start with you since you were with us last week and give you the floor to talk about what you thought and how you've seen all of this play out with the Will Smith situation.
Yeah, so I appreciate you all bringing me up to speed because honestly, in preparation for special session, I was not as attuned to the news as I could have been. But I never condone violence, but I understand when you have unresolved trauma and you have unresolved embarrassment, unresolved anger, unresolved issues, that you sometimes will act out. And so I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to redouble down on the fact that everybody should see a therapist. And I know that we're gonna jump into some of the other dynamics, but also I would say to those of us that are ladies in relationships with men, we also need to understand our responsibility and our power that we have when we ask to be protected, to make sure that we're asking for our men to do something that is strategic and actually helpful in said protection, because that won't it. So that's my little 2 cents.
Girl, you said it well. A lot of what you said was what we touched on last week. So thank you for that. And Alvin, I'm coming straight to you because you left off last week with something that I've been thinking about all week. You talked about how, Black people are in these 3 different categories. And so for people that didn't listen to the show last week or didn't hear about it, how do you categorize? You said you and your family, y'all have discussions and y'all categorize.
3 categories. Yeah.
How does it work?
Yeah, so we got 3 categories. So you've got chocolate, you've got black, and you have orange. Now, chocolate is generally achieved by virtue of professional achievement, education, class not in terms of I was born rich, but class also in terms of conduct, then understanding of your responsibility, be above and beyond yourself, what you represent. We often would refer to chocolate folk as, the Obama generation. These are families and individuals who understand that it is bigger than you. Right. And you show up a particular way because you understand that mantle and responsibility, fair or unfair, that you carry, you understand it. Chocolate often transcends culture. So these are often people who navigate and swim in both spaces multiculturally. They are not the folk that you're just like, oh, she sound or he sound like a stereotypical Black person. They don't fit the stereotype in a lot of ways. They transcend that stereotype. Now, that doesn't mean that they aren't multilingual and they can't speak like they're from the street if they're home with their people. It's to say that they do know how to code switch very well, and they're just as comfortable in any boardroom as they are on a basketball court. That would be chocolate. The Cosbys before the, the Huxtables before Bill and his scandal happened, they would be considered a chocolate family. Blackish, they would be considered a chocolate family, right? Then you got Black. Those are just regular, everyday Black folks, middle class, just grinding, trying to make it work, doing the best that they can. You know, like they're the folks you're gonna see in Walmart and Target. They're the regular Black folk, just working hard. And then you got Orange. Orange is what a lot of us, when we are off air, those of us who use the N-word lovingly might say, you know, okay. So instead of saying the N-word, we say orange folk, right? That means that either you've been in an orange jumper or somebody in your family's been in that orange jumpsuit, right? Like there's a certain, there's a certain group of folk that understand, you know, somebody grew up in the projects, somebody may still live in the projects, somebody is just above public housing, you know, like that's not a slight on anyone. It's just to say that every economic level has its own culture and its rules of engagement. You know, the importance of respect is much higher when you come down the SES level, right? The way you looked at me, you disrespected me. The way you talked to me, you disrespected me. When you stepped on my sneakers, you disrespected me. When you was, you know, DM my girl, you it's a little bit, the rules are different at each level. So what we were saying, or what we talk about in our house that I brought into the conversation, is that I think the problem is sometimes that the world assumes that just because you have money, that makes you chocolate. You could be rich and orange. We see that in entertainment all the time, rappers, football players, and you see it all the time. Just because you're super rich doesn't suddenly make you chocolate. Chocolate is a way of seeing the world and navigating the world that is just a bit different. So, and chocolate folk would be the first folk to be like, you know how them Black people act? Like, chocolate folk understand like the difference between things. So that's what we were saying in terms of the categories, so to speak, of Black people. We're all Black, but we have different experiences of the world and we navigate the world differently by virtue of those.
All right, so I think everybody agrees to that. So let me ask the question, one word answer. So Alvin, I'm gonna start with you. Will Smith, what category is he in?
So I think that the world saw him as chocolate, but then he behaved like he was orange. And that is not what they were expecting.
All right. Anton, what category is Will in?
Truthfully, I really think he was chocolate. And I think he got, it was the bravado that put him into a different category. But I think at his core that he's probably chocolate.
Okay. Jason, what category?
I will have to lean to what my brother and my sister said. I think he's chocolate, just had a hint of orange come through. We all have that hint of orange slip through every now and again.
All right. See ya.
So I'm not sure I agree with the categories.
It's okay.
I'm going to have to digest that a little bit more because I want to be able to check my own privilege and respectability politics, because I'm not sure that's necessarily what we need in this moment globally. But in this instance, I'm not sure. I'm going to think about it, though. About it.
That's fair.
What do you say, Kevin?
This is where we disagree. I don't see him as chocolate.
Well, hey, can I be Ray? Can I be Ray for radio and Facebook? I would have to say, hold on. I would have to say both Antoine. And here's the reason why. He was chocolate in the moment because
you gonna get it.
You know, I lift weights. I ain't scared of him. In the moment, he looked good. He was well put together. But in his core, when Chris made that joke, he's from West Philly, born and raised, playground where he spent most of his days. If I can just say, that's his laugh we talk to. If I could just say this, I would just say this, and I'll land the plane right here, Kevin, and I'll say, if that was one of us, what would we have done? I mean, you could be chocolatey top, but you could also be orange. I'm just saying, that's what I'm saying today. I'm Jason.
All right. So, Alvin, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that most of us tend to put as you define it, the chocolate people in a higher level of respect, right? And we esteem them because of the examples that you gave. You gave Obama, you gave Cosby before the Huxtable image. We esteemed that
Those
group
kind of.
of Black people, right?
And let me be clear, they don't have to be celebrity to be that. There are people sitting right here that would be considered chocolate. It's all kinds of things. Go ahead.
Which is why a lot of people are so disappointed, because the higher level of esteem. And then, like, for example, if Kanye would have done this, I don't know if we would have had the same reaction, right? Because maybe we don't put Kanye in the same category that we. So for me, I'm not putting Will in the chocolate category. That's me. I don't see. There's no way I'm putting Will in the same category as Obama. There's no way I'm putting Will in the same category as the Huxtable in that image and that level of it. What has he done to earn that? And I think for me, that's why when y'all first reached out to me, and I know I was like, yo, I don't care, because I don't see him at that highest level. So y'all convinced me. How do you all see him as chocolate? What happened that he got to that level where now the fall from grace has been so far? Where, for example, is Jay-Z chocolate? Is Beyonce chocolate? They're not. But Will is, in your mind.
Yeah, I saw Will differently. And I'll tell you why I saw Will differently, because just looking at the body of his work, when he was a rapper, Will was considered the clean
rapper.
He was considered, matter of fact, some of the rappers thought that he was weak because he didn't do the cursing. And he didn't do some of the more urban type of rap. And so just looking at the body of his work with Fresh Prince and even the movies that he has selected to do, they're more mainstream. They are more appealing to all demographics of America. So, and even the scandals, because many of our celebrities and whether they be actors or they be entertainers or whatever, typically there's some level of scandal behind the scene. Now, we've seen that in the recent years, but prior to that, and even with the ones in the recent years, most people look at Jada versus looking at him. And that's another conversation too. But and I'll digress. But nonetheless, I've just seen him in a light of he has worked hard to create a brand, and a brand that it shocked me that he was willing in that moment to literally injure that brand because of whatever unaddressed issues and unaddressed trauma. Because Marcia, that's exactly what we talked about last week. Unaddressed trauma will make you self-sabotage. And that's what he did. He sabotaged himself. So I here's the thing. Obama can be chocolate, but it doesn't mean that you have to be at that certain level of respectability to still be chocolate. So just like there are variations of chocolate and variations of vanilla, there's just variations, and we can't just have a broad brush stroke to say only this type of person can be in this group of chocolate. So I think you're don't forget the variations, because we are a very multi-layered people.
Yeah. And for those who tuning in, the nuance of the conversation we're having today is not that we talked about that last week. What we're talking about today is the reaction of people based on our perception of Will, right? And where we see him. Like if another Black person had done this, would our reaction have been different as opposed to seeing Will do it, right? And I just threw out a name. So I'm just saying to y'all said Jay-Z ain't chocolate. You said there ain't no variations. Even in variations of chocolate time, you said Jay-Z ain't chocolate. But Jay-Z a billionaire. But he's a billionaire.
But like I said, that money by itself doesn't do it.
Yeah, not money. He hood billionaire. So,
But he's you could argue he's more accomplished than Will.
He is accomplished.
But it's
Go ahead,
more,
Al. Go ahead, Al.
but it's more than that. You know, like it's not just what you like, how famous you become or how much money you have. Like, for instance, let's take it out of Black folk for just a second. The equivalent on the white side, it does not matter that Trump is a billionaire. He's orange for a white person. Like, it does not matter. He does not, but I'm telling you, for those of us who would do the assessment, that man is orange. Like, and he may be a billionaire orange, but the lack of couth and grace and understanding of how to interact with multiple people and be socially aware of, you know, how to connect with individuals, like, he doesn't care. And that's one of the things that comes with what we would consider orange. Like, you're going to just keep it real, but you're going to keep it so real that it's wherever it lands, right? Like, it's wherever it lands. Cardi B would be orange, you know, like, girl is talented, made a ton of money, but she orange, you know, like, she's just going to be whatever she is on that microphone. It does not matter who's around. There's no code switching to be had. I am just what I am. And I don't say it in a disrespectful way. I'm just merely saying that we all know that there's certain folks that we would take to certain places because we know how they're going to carry themselves. And when you're chocolate, it's not just about whether you're rich or not rich. It's this understanding of social graces and appropriateness and navigating certain kinds of spaces and being able to speak across various languages. It's more than just money alone. So, like, because none of us are billionaires on this call, but I would say we got lots of chocolate, you know, like, on this show.
Yeah. And I respect that, right? And I respect the successes of Will Smith. Don't get me wrong. He's box office, right? We know that, right? He's done a lot of things. He won an Oscar, right? At the same night that this whole incident went down. So we're not saying that he's not accomplished, but when I think of a chocolate actor, Will Smith ain't the first person I think of. Denzel.
Absolutely. Denzel is absolutely.
Idris Elba. So where did Will get that? That's what I'm trying to figure. Like, how did he get into this club? Because I maybe it's just me. I've never seen him in that club that we're trying to like he ain't the best rapper and he ain't the best actor. So how did he get that? How did he ascend?
So if you're asking me what I would have said that makes that possible is his ability to transcend culture, economics, gender, class, his ability to transcend all of those things. You got white folks that don't even like Black movies and they've watched every Will Smith movie. You know, like, you've got white folks that don't do hip hop and they know Will Smith's music. And it's not about making you better, because this is not an issue of you better than. That's not what we mean. Just that there are cultures that exist inside of a greater culture. There are subcultures in every culture, right? So the way in which Will has been able to navigate space over the years, the way in which he's been able to capture audience over the years, what he's been able to command, his ability to command the dollars in the box office is similar to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is never pictured with a woman of color on camera, ever. Because he understands his brand. And this is not I'm not promoting this as good, but he understands that for his brand, he has to be seen colorlessly. So he does not add additional emphasis on the fact that he is Black. He does not add any emphasis on that at all. Go ahead, Kevin.
So is Tyler Perry chocolate?
I would consider Tyler Perry Black.
I consider him Black too. Yeah,
me too. Like, he's rich, but I would consider him Black.
All right. See, help me with this.
I'm gonna tell you who I would say is chocolate. I would say Chris Rock was chocolate, because Chris Rock worked that brand on Oscar night. Because right now his tickets are going for $1,000, where before they were going more than $1,000. Where before they were going for $46. Why? Because he understood the moment. He was shocked, he was dazed, he was embarrassed, and he probably was ticked off. But he said, me retaliating in this moment, I cannot win at all. because I did make the joke. And so me fighting him and him giving the opportunity to be able to say he was protecting his woman, and then I'm fighting him on this stage, on this night, I can't win. So I got to take that lick. But what I will do is I will turn that into my bank, because I will work this scenario so that I'll be able to expand my brand. And here's the thing, people could be mad about Chris Rock, about what he did and what he said, because, you know, I thought it was crossing the line. Personally, I really thought it was crossing the line. However, what I am seeing is it ain't no different than how the devil do. The devil come in up in there and he sneak up in there and he'll start something and then he'll slide back and say, what are you talking about? Did I do that? But yet that's what he did, and he is working that brand. And I can't be mad at him for working that brand. But the brother did cross the line, but he found a way, even in the midst of all of that, to be able to expand his brand.
He handled that moment with a lot of grace, you know, like just, it could have gone so sideways inside of that. I will also say that if 50 Cent had made that joke, Will would have never got up on that stage and slapped him. I promise you he wasn't getting up on that stage to slap 50. And 50 be dragging everybody. But like, there's no way Will was going to slap 50. I'm just telling you right now, that would not have happened. So he knew that Chris would not have responded the way that, that a 50 would have responded.
Hey, Alvin, let me to that point. If you look on Black Twitter and Instagram, to prove your point, there was a when that whole entanglement thing happened, 50 checked on Will in the DM, and they kind of went back and forth in the DM. However, you don't even know this happened because Will ain't gonna talk about that. 50 bought out, now 50 petty as Jacks, another show.
Totally.
But that goes to your point that when it's like, well, I don't know who said it last week. Men, when we go to fight, we size jokers up.
That's what
even if we're gonna take an L, we figure out, okay, this L, it's not gonna be this bad because I'm gonna do this. Will stayed in the DM, because if it was me, I would have came out the DM and say, yo, this joker coming from me and my woman, boom, boom, boom. But Will knew if he would came out those DMs, 50, man, and that was just minimum. Consider
50 been shot multiple times. He's scared.
So I just wanted to share that too.
All right, cool. So let me go to Sia. Sia, the whole discussion today is around how we are perceiving Will, right? And what Ton and Alvian are saying is that they perceived Will at the highest stature of how we tend to look at people, right? That's the chocolate category, right? Within the Black community. And that's why this story is so large, because of Will's position. If it were 50 Cent who smacked Chris, if it were someone else who we don't esteem or seemingly esteem as high, then maybe this story, it still will be large, but not to the extent of what it is now. What do you say to that, Steve?
So I think my discomfort with the conversation is in viewing, if we work within the models that, that we've heard, the 3 different categories, I think a lot of people view them as a linear progression upward. And that goal sounds based in white supremacy. And so even how we are perceiving ourselves, I think says a lot about our internalized racism, to the point where we have lower expectations of 50 Cent than we do Will, but why? Like, we have lower expectations of certain people. And I'm not talking about I'm talking about the 50 Cent persona, like who he is and who he presents himself to be. And I just want to caution, because for me, within this schematic, what doesn't click is, now my parents raised me a certain way, but I learned a lot about manners, how to navigate the world, how to be smart and strategic from some people that I think others would put in the Black category, because a lot of people in the chocolate category weren't really trying to help the rest of the community. So I just want to caution who we're putting where and based off what. So if the more acceptable you are means the closer to white, white people accepting you, then let's have a spatial thinking about it where we all can coexist, because that's not everybody's goal. Like, not everybody that has a lot of money is trying to act in a certain way. And so what I'm trying to, I guess, in myself reconcile, I wish we were in a world where Will Smith and Chris Rock got into an altercation and it didn't mean anything for the whole race, right? It's just about them two people. Just like if one white somebody had done that to one white somebody else, we wouldn't be breaking down whiteness. We would just be like, oh, that was messed up. Or we would talk about whether or not we agree with violence as conflict resolution or not. And so I think what's really important about this is the conversation that we're having, what it says to us, how we feel about what they expect of us. And the reason why that's really important to me is because my hair is falling out. At one moment in my life, whether it's in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, I will be Jada. And I want to make sure that while I may not be comfortable, and I'm going very, I'm taking away the fact that they were laughing before this happened. I'm going more global with this now. I wish everybody would stop having Black women as the butt of their jokes, period. Because what we are going through, the fact that I will be bald one day, it messes with the Black and white expectations of what beauty are based on, mainstream expectations. So I want to talk about that. How do we globally shift our expectations and our goals to be far removed from this 402 history of trying to ascertain this standard of conduct that they don't even live up to? You got the insurrection, you got white on white crime. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that, right? We're talking about, well, let's introspect and what this means for Black people and how we can do this. I just want to make sure that we're keeping everything on the table as we're having these conversations, because right now it is super uncomfortable.
Yeah, but see, that's the point, Sia, and I want to raise that to Albion in time, because we had this discussion off here too. This is what we do in the Black community. Mm-hmm. To your point, that white people don't do in their community. If this were two white people, they don't carry the whole race, but we do that, right? So Obama, we all felt like, he was representing us, right? We all feel like one Black person represents all of us in certain situations, right? So let's talk about that. I mean, why do you think that happens?
Because it's actually very simple. I mean, it's the fact that we represent such a small minority inside of opportunity that we carry the responsibility. And I said fair or unfair, okay? We carry the responsibility of all those coming behind us. So when you're the first woman, so we could take this out of race. If you're the first woman to get an opportunity and you come into that opportunity and act a fool, you other women are immediately thinking, sis, you can't do that because it was so hard for us to get there. You can't be in that space making every man that finally voted to allow us in, because we had to get permission to get to the table because there were no other women to invite us into that space. So in essence, when you're locked outside of a space, you are knocking on a door waiting for the others to decide that you're good enough to come in. And when you get to the table, how you handle your business at the table has implication for other folks who would like to also get to the table, right? So basic numbers puts us in an unfair position, and we could get into the system that has made it that way, which is a different conversation, right? But because of the system that we're operating in, our small minority representation at some of the most elite spaces puts us in a position that we can't even, President Obama knew he couldn't even poop. Okay, like you can't pass gas, you can't sneeze. If that dude had ever gotten caught even looking like he's trying to mess with another woman, it would have been the stereotype of no Black men are faithful. They're never there for their women. They're this, that, and the other. He understood, and if you read any of his books, he understood the magnitude of his responsibility, even though it is unfair for any one person to carry a whole gender, race, generation on their back It is what happens when you are an only or a few. So that's why I would say that Will finds himself inside of this space because there's so few Black actors that transcend culture, that when you have that access and opportunity, many of those who wish they could or are so proud that you have look to you to conduct yourself in a particular kind of way. And the last thing I will say, as pastors, you're so infrequently allowed into political, economic, and social spaces that when you get there, when you ain't have nothing to say, you don't know the material, you don't know the subject matter, you don't understand politics, you don't understand how the government or policy or legislation is created. When you come up into that space and your mic is on and you've got nothing to say, you got 1,000 other pastors are like, dude, thank you for crapping the bed in the one moment that we got, right? So the Oscars were the first time we were seeing real diversity represented, completely produced by a person of color, with more representation of women and everything else inside of that space, LGBTQ, the list goes on. And then you step on such a great moment. Most of us are thinking, we expected you to know better. For all of the things, we expected more from you. But go ahead, Sia.
I just want to reiterate. I think the conversation can be important, but I think if we're only talking about, trust me, I get it. Every time I open a mouth in a committee room, I have to be on top of my stuff more than anybody else, right? I totally understand that. But while I am teaching others that they need to be prepared beyond perfection in order to be successful as a Black woman in politics, I also want to make sure that we're having the conversation that points the fingers at the folks that established this to be the norm, where they have the privilege of being absolutely mediocre while we're killing ourselves just to be at the starting level. So I'm just saying that I want to make sure that we're having both sides of the conversation where, yes, this is the reality, but what are we doing to change that that's the reality, such that women, Black women, pastors are allowed to be human without this expectation of perfection that the other side just does not have at all. Like that unfairness, we need to be working on that as well while we're training ourselves how to act accordingly.
No question about that. And Anton, I want to ask you what I asked Alvin. I want to piggyback on what Sia said earlier. Is it even possible that as a Black man, you and I and Jason could have looked at Will Smith and Chris Rock and say, that's just two Black men. I mean, that's just two brothers. They ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm not attaching my life, my trajectory or what. Just like two white men would look at two white people go at it, and they probably would say, I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's on them. But we do that. Like we attach ourselves to other people's stories. Why do we do that, Tom?
First of all, if Will had waited to the commercial break and had gone behind closed doors and handled his business, guess what? It's none of my business. That was between Will and Chris Rock. But when you got up on that stage in front of all of the world, forget America, but all of the world, then it became about all of us. And that's the problem. If you
all of who? All the Black people?
Oh, it became. You are living in a bubble. If you do not,
I'm just raising the question for radio.
But let me just go ahead and finish my answer, brother. Thank you. You are living in a bubble if you think that there is not a segment of the demographic segment that did not look at that and said, "Look at them." That's exactly what took place. I'm not saying it's fair, Marcia. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's right. And I'm not saying that we should be looking at what they did and how they put us in that boat. I'm not saying all the causes and the roots of it. But what I am saying is this is where we are. And because this is where we are, we can address the root issue along with addressing the behavior that took place that night. What you add to the conversation, Marcia, is perspective. However, we can't just add perspective and not also address the poor behavior. because we can't take away from the fact that there are people looking at us and judging us based upon the status and the position that we have. That's just, it's a reality. I'm not saying it's fair, but it's just a reality of it. That's why Obama was able to continue his speech when he's given his union address, and someone is screaming out to him, "You lie."
Liar.
Come on, because me, I'd have said your mama. See, but I can't say your mama because then I'm looked upon all. I mean, y'all, I'm trying to keep it real, y'all. I'm trying to keep it real.
Hold tight, Tom.
I would want to have said your mama, but because of the stage that he was on, he understood that he could not lower himself. He knew, first of all, who he was, but he also understood who he represented. And he did not lower himself for a shot that he would have been more than right to respond likewise.
Todd, let me ask you this. Do you feel like, as the Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Hampton, do you feel like mostly other Black people are attaching themselves to you and what you do? Because
I ain't got to feel that way. All I got to do is go into a grocery store and a grandmama come up to me and hug me and say, "Baby, I'm so proud of you."
So proud.
Boy, you're going to make me preach up in here. You're going to make me tell it. When they come up to me and say, "Baby, I'm so proud of you." They don't even know me. I don't even know them. But they say, "Baby, I'm so proud of you. You make us look good." When I go to these community events and they hug you and they encourage you and they know what you're facing. They know what you're going through because of the color of your skin, because they've seen it all their lives. Woo! And yet you handled the position in such a way that make them proud in their perception and in their mind. So I ain't got to think it. I'm telling you what I know. Absolutely. I can't even tell you how many haters I've dealt with, how many people that have come for me that I wanted to shank in my sleep, but I can't because I'm just keeping it real, y'all. I'm just keeping it real. Marcia, you know what I'm talking about. I'm just keeping it real. The disrespect that they will come for you and say these things to you. And it's sad to say, it ain't just people who don't look like me, because many times it's people that look like me that will come to you and will lie on you. And yet you have to hold your tongue and not be able to say a mumbling word to that regard, because of the position you hold. You come across as a bully, or you come across as an elitist, or you come across as something other than who you really are, which is a Black man trying to do the best he can to be the best version of who God called him to be. So absolutely, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Todd.
I would have put it on backwards.
Jason, let me come to you, man, please. All right. So what we're hearing is two things, and Marcia eloquently brought it out. The two dynamics that we have here is the first part of the conversation we had. How we, as Black people, tend to look at others in higher ranking positions, and how sometimes we feel like we attach ourselves to them because they're not only representing themselves, but they're representing us too, which may be unique in our community, right? Because other white people don't look at other white people and say, "You representing me."
They don't have to.
They don't have to do that, but we do, right? Then the other dynamic of what Marcia is talking about is the standard that has been put upon us to make us feel like we got to act like this, right? To survive. But I want to go back to, like, why do you think we attach ourselves to others when other ethnic groups may not do that? Why do we attach ourselves to why do we feel like, Obama, he representing me, when I don't feel like all pastors represent me, although I'm a pastor, right? I don't think, Tom, you believe every Commonwealth attorney represents you, even though there are others, right? But we do this in our community, right? Why do we do that, Jay?
I mean, it's almost that mentality. We jokingly, we call Alvin Dr. Ivy and Doctor. It's that mentality of if that one can get out, I'll attach myself to that one. I think it's ironic, and I didn't do this on purpose. While y'all were talking, a friend of mine texted me and said, "Hey, I'm the only person of color in this luncheon," and just out of reflex, I said, "Don't embarrass us." And then we're here having this conversation. It's really what Sia said. Is that I forget the word you use about the inner racism that we have for our own selves. We put this pressure on ourselves that is so robust, and y'all have missed it for the last few weeks, and I'm not gonna let you miss it today. The agrinuciousness of how that thing feels. Swan, it's an enigma to me. Seriously, it's an enigma to me that you even think about when you're on the phone and you say, "Hello, good afternoon. This is Jason speaking. How may I help you?" And then somebody walk up, "You sound white." Or if I have an appointment that's at 1 o'clock, I get there at 12:30. They be like, "Yo, you acting white.
You on that white people time.
You on that white people time." But when did the standard of excellence take a color or pigmentation? Like, I'm an excellent professional, not because I'm black. It's because my daddy raised me to let my word be my word. If I'm saying I'm gonna be there at 1, I'm gonna be there at 1. If I say I'm gonna be this child's father, I'm gonna be this child's father regardless of. But we for whatever reason, and if I could figure it out, like I was gonna be coining these terms, chocolate and black and orange. If I could find this out, I promise y'all, when y'all get an undisclosed number or somebody calling your phone, it's me, because I found out the secret of how we can stop compartmentalizing ourselves. You think about even with the Harriet Tubmans that went out and went back and got our people. Why was it just one woman that we about messed up? Why was it just one black woman that took that mantle on when you had a plantation of able-bodied black men? It's a, for me, being part of mental health profession, it's a mental thing that we struggle with. Going back to our original conversation, this all stemmed because Will Smith smacked Chris Rock. But please don't think that Will Smith smacked Chris Rock because he called Jay the bald head. That ain't why that man did that.
That's a fact.
Funny fact, and I'm about to be out. I told you all off air last week about an altercation. I almost made it. I almost had to call Commonwealth attorney. But I remember myself and my wife reminded me who I was and said, "Hey, you can't do that." Had my wife said, "Hey, get him," she would have been calling Anton and say, "Hey, my husband is in the lockup. Come and get him." But I say that to say this. That dude that I would have got, I wouldn't just got him for Friday night. I would have got him for every piece of disrespect that I got over the last 10 years. This right hand that Joker would have got, I would have fell on the floor out of it. Sorry, Marcia, I'm talking about violence. So sorry. You come back to violence. I'll take my glasses off. If somebody different, I'll put my glasses on. He would have got everything that everybody else did not get.
Didn't get.
Likewise with Will Smith. That wasn't about G.I. Jane 2. That wasn't about entanglement. Because here's the thing. If anybody should have got it, it should have been Will. It's not just August. Will allowed that foolishness. My wife ain't gonna have no other young man in my bed, and I'm chilling. I'm gonna get everybody out my house. Everybody. But it's because of this mentality that we have, and I could it date back to slavery? Could it be pass a law, Old Testament, the bounds or was it generational curses? I don't have the answer. And I tell you, when I get that answer, and you see that no caller ID, go ahead and pack your bag. Go ahead and get your bags ready. Matt, Alvin, Anton, Don, Kev, you and Treese. Ray gonna be late, so he gonna miss the plane anyway. So we just get Tish. I just text Tish. That's my thing. I think it boils down to being mental.
It is mentality, and to answer the question to see, I'm coming back to you. Part of it is, a large part of it is, see, you alluded to it. We have internalized acceptable behavior, not by our own standards, but by standards that other people have set upon us, right? So I use this as an example. See, you just said earlier that you're going bald, right? But who told you that you wouldn't be beautiful being bald? See, that's the problem that we have.
Is that a real question? Because we might not want to have that conversation if that's a real question.
Because until we say you're
Exactly.
beautiful being bald.
Mhm.
But if we're gonna go by what somebody else says is beauty, that's the problem.
Yep.
And so for me, Sia, yeah, you can look at all the standards that the white people set, but it really don't matter because it's the standards that we have set first.
Mm.
And what we have decided to do was to say their standard should be our standard. And that's what we got messed up. So the truth is you don't even need braids. The truth is you should be on here with a close cut, just like Todd, and we looking at you, say you just as beautiful as you would if you had the braids in.
But first of all, I'm cute in my braids, so let's say that too.
You understand my point.
And no, I totally, and that is the root of what I was trying to say. Sometimes we automatically assume that if we're saying things in different ways, that they're automatically at odds. I agree with a lot of what's being said. I just want to also caution us toward forward movement or progression beyond what this current conversation is unveiling for some. And that is exactly that. You know, I mean, I'm going to have to process. First of all, shout out to any woman that is going through PCOS, alopecia, whatever it is, because as a society, Black, white, but specifically Black, women with short haircuts have been called bald-headed their whole life, and it's been said in a negative way, right? But that's what I'm talking about being the butt of a joke. Like, I'm a pacifist, so that's what Jason was alluding to. The fact of the matter is, I wish we could have more conversations about how to proactively stand up for people in ways that are not violent. For me, that's what I was hoping. I wasn't upset that Will smacked Chris because he embarrassed me as a Black woman. I was upset because it was assault. And I know many children look up to him and may think that, well, now I can continue to be a violent person because my idol is handling his conflicts with violence. That's what hit me. It wasn't because he was Black or I took on his Blackness. It was like, dude, that's assault. You could go to jail. You could lose all that you've worked for and everything like that. So I want to have that conversation with the babies. Like, violence, to me, violence is not the answer. But even in that, I have to investigate why was it that Martin Luther King was upheld by white folks and the Black Panthers and you know, Malcolm X were put down? Why did we never learn about Nat Turner? Why did we learn so little about Harriet Tubman as opposed to it was self-defense, violence and self-defense? So then again, okay, what Will did was not self-defense, right? That was assault. And by definition, right, Anton? By definition, right? So then, okay, let's have these conversations. What does it look like for us to stand up for each other, to push back on jokes that are detrimental to people's, you know, sensibilities about themselves? What does it look like to protect our community in ways that are not violent, but also being open to self-defense when we need to be on that level? And I think that is a more comprehensive conversation where we can say, oh, I'm not trying to be who white people want me to be. I'm trying to be who I need to be, whatever moment pops up and whatever I need to address or be in that moment.
Yeah, my point to that is you're right, but we spend too much time talking about white people. And we spend less time in our own communities identifying what standards of beauty are. Black women have been marginalized for years, and it ain't just because of short hair. You got to be wafer thin. Most sisters ain't wafer thin. You ain't walking around on number 2 pencils. So why are we then saying that that's the standard of beauty? And in our own community, we're saying that's what you should look like. When we know most sisters ain't look like that. Huh?
It's not the Black women. We're not telling ourselves a lot of that. We are erroneously trying to live up to standards in heterosexual relationships that are trying to catch the eye of what Black men tell us is beautiful. And that is the conversation that we can start having.
No, I disagree with that. because I know a lot of brothers that like thick sisters. All
They
right,
don't say it out loud.
So that notion.
They don't
I
support
love thick
the
women.
brands.
Let me tell you something.
No,
Let me tell you
but
something. You know, I mean, look, there are a lot of brothers that stand up for the thick sister. Don't get it twisted.
But see, here's the other thing though.
But wait.
Where does thick begin and end? Because
Exactly.
that means,
and it is usually sexualized in hips and breasts and not in, you know, fatness or whatever. Those are so even within that, and even some guys who talk about that they love big girls, it is such a sexualized and fetishized way that, bruh, that's not what we asking for, like at all. We're asking for representation in the beauty industry. We're asking for, you know, for larger people to be the main character in Black movies and not just Madea and like the caretaker. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about who you want to do and not do. I'm talking about who you respect and who you don't respect by virtue of what they look like. Now that's where I want to dive into whenever we are ready.
That's good, Marcia. That's good stuff.
See, and that's why I also play when people talk about white privilege. I'm like, please understand there are lots of privileges, because aesthetic privilege is real too. If you match what the aesthetic standard is, what you're able to get away with, male or female, in having very little substance as a human being, just by virtue of the fact that you look a particular way, there are privileges that come with fitting the brand of what we, America, calls beautiful. And I say America because that's where we are, right? In every culture, in every country, it has its own standards of beauty. But in America, what that is, how close can you get to Kardashian? You know, how close can you get to, you know, like, in whatever that is, helps to define what your experience is going to be on the day-to-day. So like, there are all kinds of privileges. It's just that we don't acknowledge how many of them there are and how deeply they impact the dynamics in so many different ways.
All right, so look, we got to land the plane, and so I want to give everybody a chance here. And here's the final question: What do we hope will be the greatest lesson or takeaway that we can in terms of this whole situation with Will Smith? What do we hope can be a positive outcome as a result of what we have witnessed, and because it's so pervasive and there's so many layers to it? But what could be one positive takeaway? Alvy, I'll start with you.
I would say that pain pops out at unexpected moments and times. And if we are not more conscious of the fact that many of us carry pain in so many different kinds of ways, and certain things may trigger someone else's pain and we don't understand what that trigger might have been, and we don't bother to understand what the pain is underneath it, we won't heal. We won't have the opportunity to be better. So my hope is that watching someone so rich and so influential and, you know, so famous behave in a way that clearly suggests that there is pain at his base, that we will all recognize there's no one of us walking around without pain. And maybe if we take a little bit more care of ourselves and each other, then our pain won't pop out at the worst moments and at the worst times and have some horrible impact.
Yeah, that's good. Sia?
Yeah, tangentially, get some help. Everybody needs it. There is so much of that pain and trauma, and it doesn't have to be a specific event. It doesn't mean that because your friends had it worse, that you don't have issues that you need to address. But you cannot show up as your best self in moments when you are wounded, whatever that looks like. So seek out, there are free resources, especially through the pandemic. There are free resources. There are Christian resources. There are, you know, insurance-based resources. There are several people that are there willing to help you talk through your stuff so that your idea of conflict resolution, your idea of being whole and healthy and happy, you can get to that visualization and make it a reality by seeking that help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tom?
So it's interesting how all of us are talking about unaddressed trauma. And you know, I talked about that last week, but when you don't address that trauma, which each and every one of us has unaddressed
Mhm.
traumas from childhood. When you don't address that, you're a ticking time bomb. And that ticking time bomb, you cannot predict when it's going to go off. And so what I would say is, in our community especially, we need to remove the stigma of taboo when it comes to mental health issues, and be ready to allow God to heal us from those deep pains that sometimes we don't even want to tell our closest friend about those things.
Amen. Mhm.
Jason.
Mhm.
I think we kind of all in alignment today. I think your village. A lot of people blame Jada for Will's behavior. I think if you have a good village around you, not just a good spouse, but I had a homeboy. I ran something by him this morning. I thought it was a good idea. He said, "Jason, don't you do that." And that was my homeboy. So I think if we have people that's around us, not just family, but a solid village, to say what Anton just said, go get some help. You crazy? I'm sorry, that was rude. Go get some help. You struggling? What Sia just said, don't hit that man. Have a conversation. Have some restraint. So I think the village is paramount. And if you have mental health, please. I never mean to be offensive. Craig, I joke, but I don't mean it like that. So if you need help, please go get it.
Yeah, that's good. And
Kevin, what would you say?
Yeah, similar. I shared this with our congregation last week. I say, the truth is, all of us are Will Smiths. All of us have had moments where we've acted in a moment of emotion, and a moment where we felt like our button was pushed, in a moment where we felt that somebody touched our scar, right?
Mhm.
The only difference between Will Smith and us is that his played out for the world to see, and ours played out in most cases privately, right? But don't tell me we ain't got Chris Rocks in our life too. Somebody that looks for the funny or tries to go there with us. We all have them. And so for me, what I hope would happen is that all of us could instead of doing memes and laughing and joke, we try to put ourselves in a situation where we say, you know what, that could easily be me.
Mm-hmm.
That could easily be me where I just react to a situation. And now what I say is, in the 45 seconds that he reacted, now his entire career, people will not remember as much. And all of us up here are professional and successful in our craft. Y'all better not let 45 seconds ruin what took 20, 25 years to build. And I wish some pastors hear what I'm saying, because you done built your ministry and now you want a side piece. And that 20 minutes with that side piece has ruined the reputation
20 years of ministry. Yes.
Of your ministry.
Yep.
That's what we're dealing with. And Todd, can I go Old Testament for you, please?
Go for it, please.
So when Jacob and his twin brother Esau, you know the story, right? So Esau comes from the field. Jacob already got the stew, right? He sells his birthright for some beans. Because in a moment, he got caught up and lost his future blessing. And to me, that's the lesson of all this. All of us are Will Smiths, y'all. All of us in one moment can change the narrative of our entire career based on a bad situation.
That's it. That's it. That's good stuff.
Let's do better. Let's do better. So we got to run. Sia's glad to have you back. The backup singer saying we sounded a lot better today, even though the guitar player ain't here. But that's a whole other.
I'm glad to be back.
You see how our chords harmonize? We harmonize with our chords.
We got to run. Until next time, be blessed to be a blessing to someone else. This is Smooth 88.1 WHOV iHeartRadio. And right here, y'all, on Facebook Live.